We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AV Rant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who checked in with me about my injured shoulder, which is on the mend. It's not perfect yet, but I can slowly raise it all the way up. Remember last week, Tom?
We talked about that on the podcast?
Not on the podcast, but I tweeted it out. I have an injured shoulder. I'm pretty sure it's bursitis. It's the swollen, flamed up little fluid thingies around the shoulder there.
How did you get that? I mean, I thought you had to exercise to get that. I didn't think that you exercised.
Thanks very much.
I don't mean that in a bad way. I just
yes,
never once talked about, I went running today.
No. My right shoulder has been not right ever since I was about, 17 years old and was playing baseball and hurt it. So
Okay.
it's never been perfect since then. And then I drive a lot. So a lot of the driving motion, common to have the shoulder injury. So I don't know. That's the thought. Been going to physio, got the x-ray, got the ultrasound. Haven't got the results from the ultrasound yet, but nothing wrong with the bones. Motion is coming back. Still a little sore and stiff, but it's getting there. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah? So the x-ray was okay. I didn't know that you
X-ray's
could
fine.
injure yourself driving other than like running into something. So I guess
It's the repetitive motion. I mean, it's an inflammation of the little fluid thingies around your shoulder.
I understand what
I think it is.
I get it, but I'm glad that
great.
it's not. I mean, when you showed me last week, it was
bad.
I was like,
I got okay. I don't. If anyone's seen the video, I can't even see it because of the logo thing. But I got to about here, and that was it. Couldn't go any farther.
I couldn't see that because I wasn't looking at you.
Not even like a 90-degree angle. But
No.
so I can raise it now. Hooray! It's just stiff.
Look
and a
how
little bit
far up
sore.
your arm went just now.
Oh,
That
that's
was
a
pretty
real boy.
good. It was just like your strings got reattached in the right places.
That's
Your
right.
marionette strings. All right. This is AV Rent, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/avrantpodcast. YouTube.com/avrant.
Yup.
You can leave a comment there, but we will ignore it. You can contact us directly, rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @firstreflect. I am Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. So until our producer delivers a video, he's not getting any more mentions on this podcast.
Yeah, with the no video and not having touched the topic list in a month now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much of a producer he's been lately.
He is absconded with these speakers. I'm gonna have to send a collection agency after him.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
The Rock.
That's
Maybe The
not,
Rock.
I mean, SBS still likes us, but they might not for much longer if those do not get returned to them. So
I am. Yeah. You can email him at. Wait, no. Should we? No.
No.
His Twitter is @Austin TIN Pond.
TEN
Pond.
Jeez.
See, I've already forgotten him. He's dead to me.
It's not like we haven't given out his Twitter before, so that's no secret. Yes.
Right. All right. Start this podcast. It's
gonna be one of those.
Yeah.
We're not editing that out. We don't edit.
No, we don't edit.
No.
Editing? What is that? I would edit. Yeah, I'd probably edit if I accidentally said the bad word. I would not edit if you said the bad word because I think it would be hilarious. The number of times I've heard you curse, even when we're playing first-person shooters, has been so low that it would be worth it to keep it in there.
Maybe that's how we get our viewership up.
There we go. It's like we would just call it a Canadian curse, and everybody would be like, "What?"
Everyone come and see it.
All right, let's thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One way you can do that is going to www.avrant.com and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There you can leave us a PayPal donation. You don't have to have a PayPal account, but you do have to have a credit card. A PayPal account, I think, works out better for everybody.
That'll work.
If you do that. So
you can use
transfer it that way. So we want to thank Miguel. Miguel went there and gave us a PayPal donation. Those monies go into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and other things. So thank you, Miguel.
Yes, Miguel, thank you very much for that donation.
We also want to thank our patrons. over at patreon.com. It's a service where you can sign up and support our podcast once a month. It'll take some money out of your account and give most of it to us.
Mm-hmm.
I think 70 cents of the dollar or something.
Pretty much.
70
It's around
cents.
that.
Yeah. You can send it to us and to help support us. So we want to thank our 58 patrons from patreon.com.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to support us monthly, thanks so much to our 58 patrons.
Thank you. And we want to especially thank you if you support the podcast in some way, but maybe not financially. Just let us know what you've done. So Kurt bought a receiver from Accessories for Less. Let them know you heard about it from us. Bobby sent a list of helpful links for finding a gaming computer to me. John recommended a pre-built AMD-based gaming PC for $675 on Amazon, which is what I was looking at the beginning of this podcast, which is why I was kind of staring off into space before.
Honestly, that's quite tempting because, I mean, you have to remember, even after you build the thing, if you put it together yourself, you still have to pay for Windows. Which is
you see,
not
that's
super cheap.
That's what I was thinking too, and I was
Yeah.
thinking about that with my son. So I don't know. I might jump on that one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to talk to my wife and see what she says, but I might have to jump on that one.
Yeah, because that's got everything all there.
And then
Yeah.
the guy from last week who said he was going to send me a graphics card did send it. It arrived. My son is very curious as to what's in that box. So what's in the box? I'm like, you haven't seen Seven. Shut up. But it would be hilarious if he said it like that, though. But yeah, so I've got that. So I could add that to the other thing if it's better than what's in there.
I don't know if something of that level supported Crossfire. So
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, figure out which one's better. Swap them out. But yes, thank you to Kurt, Bobby, and John. We appreciate the support.
Yes. In the news, so long, Rob. Why is
But
it
it's
so
only
long?
one.
I know, but it's like a whole page.
But it's got the details. We want the deets.
Vizio announced their 2018 lineup of TVs. There's a whole bunch of them. They all have different numbers based on where they're sold out of, so they can track it. First, there really are TVs again in this year, as Vizio is including over-the-air TV tuners in every model, which is, I think, going to be more and more necessary as we go forward, because lots of people are cutting the cord.
Yup.
And
apparently that didn't work out for the past couple of years. Apparently people were like, hey, wait a second, where's my TV tuner?
Yeah, the guy at Sam's are trying to sell you DirecTV. They know me now. They're like, oh, you cut the cord, right? I'm like, yep. He goes, well, catch all those Pokemon. I said, I will. Thank you. Yep. Gotta go. So at the top is the new P Series Quantum. It only comes in one size, 65 inches for $2,200, which sounds kind of reasonable. It has 192 zones of local dimming, 2,000 nits for HDR, Dolby Vision HDR10, and HLG. And as the name suggests, it uses quantum dots to hit 98.5% of DCI-P3 color. That sounds all very good. Vizio showed it off head-to-head against an LG OLED in an unusually candid display where they pointed out how the OLED had per pixel control that they could not match. But their counterpoint was that the P Series Quantum is less expensive and it's brighter. And everybody's like, yeah, I'll take it.
Entirely fair. Like, rather than trying to say they're better than OLED in every conceivable way, they're like, yeah, it can do something we can't, but we can get brighter and we're cheaper. So, pretty good. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's pretty good.
I like it. All right, so in the new M series has 55, 65, and 70.
We missed the P series, though.
I skipped that? Oh, I thought it was the same thing.
So that was P Quantum, which is only 65 inches.
Oh, so there's another P series as well. Okay, the P series, the rest of the P series, which was not Quantum, comes in 55, 65, and 75 inches for $900, $1,300, and $2,500 respectively. 100 local zones of dimming and 1,000 nits and a 120 hertz panel. So that's what that is.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty good. 65 inches for $1,300 is
I know
stupid cheap. I mean, that's just stupid cheap, especially considering it's gonna go on sale eventually.
Yeah.
The new M series has 55, 65, and 70-inch models, and other than the 70-incher, that's $1,500. It's tough to figure out why you wouldn't just save up a couple $100 to get the P series. $700 for 55 versus the other one, which was $900 for 55. $1,000 for the 65 versus $1,300 for the other one. And but what's the 70-inch one? It's on here.
Well, 70 inches, 1,500, and then it's 75 inches in the P series, so it's different size.
All right, but the number of local dimming zones go down to 40
Yeah.
which is considerably different.
Yes.
Vizio says they only hit at roughly 600 nits, and they're not claiming to have as much wide color support as the P series and the 60 hertz panel. So it seems like the TCL6 series has advantages at these price points. If you want to save a couple $100, dude, we are totally going to be recommending the P series from now on.
Yeah, the P series is the value champ in my opinion this year, because you're I mean, these are worthwhile things, right? Like getting up to 100 zones of local dimming, the full 1000 nits, the 120 hertz panel, like those are all nice things if they don't cost you way more, and they're not costing you way more. So throughout 2017, we really liked recommending the M series.
Yeah.
Because the P series was actually dimmer last year than the M series. It was weird. But this year for 2018, the P series is looking like a champ.
Yeah. So they also have their E series. It still has local dimming, but it's only got 12 zones. The big difference is that they have added Dolby Vision to the E series, and they claim it'll hit 400 nits. Sizes range from 43 up to 75 inches. And I guess the D series, which is, for people who really just want the cheapest thing possible. Doesn't have any local dimming, and they're still 4K, and they still compatible with HDR10, and they go from 43 up to 70 inches. No local dimming. So is it edge-lit?
No, it's still backlit, but there's no local dimming. And I believe the cheapest one for 43 inches was $299. So a 4K TV that's compatible with HDR10 for $300. That's honestly not that bad. Like there's your computer monitor, let's say.
Yeah, I was exactly what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Finally, they had probably the best demonstration of local dimming. They made special units of each series with nothing but a transparent LCD layer so that the LEDs can be seen in action. They also detailed exactly how many rows and columns each series has, making it very easy for you to understand why blooming and flash lighting happens. There's a YouTube video that you will find linked on our description page.
I loved this demonstration, and I loved how candid they were.
I'm going to check this out. I haven't seen this.
Oh, yeah. It's super nice to see. And again, so they're like on the E series, they're like, we only have 2 columns. There's the left column and the right column.
Oh, but then they have like rows that they can do.
Yeah, so they have, in that one, they got 6 rows and 2 columns, giving them 12 zones of local dimming. In the M series, they have 4 columns and 10 rows. So that's how you get your 40 zones of local dimming. But then when you get to the P series with its, 100 zones, and the P series Quantum with its 192 zones, it's like the bunching of the LEDs is pretty darn good around the lit object.
Right.
And it's really easy to see how that works. It's a fantastic demonstration.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, Emotiva has released an 18 gigabits per second HDCP 2.2 base T signal extender. It's $400, but it works with a single Cat6 cable, and it's certified for 18 gigabits per second for up to 130 feet, which is an installer thing that people certainly will buy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it certainly will buy. It's the cheap. I mean, the $400. You're like, that sounds like a lot. Yeah, dude. Do you know how much you would spend for 130 feet of active HDMI cable to make it work?
Yeah,
you're
the
saving
fiber optic
money.
one at that length is gonna be kind of a similar price.
Yeah.
So this is not. I don't mind this. That's one of the less expensive HDBaseT things that you can buy as a consumer. So that's why it's worth mentioning, because there are some people who are like, I'm running it all the way from my basement on the other side of the house to my 3rd floor on the opposite end of my house, and it's like that's kind of what you need. So it could be useful to somebody, just letting you know it's out there.
All right, got some comments here. Chris on Twitter shared a photo of all the gear he's bought for his theater, saying he's finally ready to begin his installation. It's a murderer's row of AV-Rant recommendations. It's Elite Screens projection screen, the BenQ 2050 short throw projector, dual SVS SP12 NSD subs that were on sale recently, HSU in-wall speakers, outdoor speaker depot in-ceiling speakers, wires and accessories from Monoprice and Amazon, and an APC J25B battery backup. So yeah,
I like
it.
Those are
it's nice
very
to look
high
at.
value things. Yes, and
I'm looking at the picture right now, and it is that's a kind of, you walk by it and you smile.
Oh yeah,
every time you walk by it. That's awesome.
And I was saying I was oddly most excited about that battery backup, and he's like, yeah, it is the heaviest thing.
It is. Oh yeah, they're so heavy. You're like,
well, it's a car battery in there, basically.
I know. Yeah, it's you're like, why is this thing so heavy? It is totally heavy. Ted is very happy with this new Denon X4400H receiver that his wife got him because of us, I think. He wanted to let us know that he had previously described some issues with slightly blurry images, which we thought were due to a defective player. Turns out it must have been his old receiver with the 4400 in place. Everything looks sharp as a tack. So that problem was so long ago, I don't even remember that.
Yeah. A little bit strange. You don't expect it with digital sources. I'm not sure what was going on there.
I must have had some sort of video processing going on.
Some sort of video processing that was non-defeatable.
Yeah, something. Mark wanted to share his excitement with fellow home theater nuts who can appreciate his experience. When he first wrote us, AVRant, almost a year ago, he mentioned how he had purchased a business-class LCD projector based on years of having worked in the commercial AV space where brighter is better is the motto. I remember this. Actually, I remember this guy. Okay, what he says is, we didn't make fun of him, and we didn't say that what he had was awful or a total waste. We just talked about how home theater projectors focus more on black levels and contrast, and we suggested looking for an Epson 5030 UB since it's older and only 1080p, which is all he really needed or wanted, so it's less expensive, but still really good. The $1,700 price tag was still too high for him, and he was feeling a bit let down about that. But then he found a fellow AV nerd on Craigslist who was selling it, the 5030 UB, for $700. He'd taken excellent care of it and still had the original box and all the accessories. The 3D glasses had never even been opened, which is mostly the case with these glasses. Mark is thrilled with it. The picture is fantastic, and so he's thankful for the advice and that there's a community who cares about this stuff as much as he does. So, yeah.
Yes, we're happy for you, Mark. We do appreciate it. We do understand. I remember one of my sister's friend's husband. We were just chatting one time, and he's like, "Oh, I've got." This was like years and years ago.
Right.
He's like, "I've got one of the Piano Plus projectors, which is Sim 2. You know the company Sim 2.
Oh, right,
they had their Piano Plus, and at the time that was like a. Gosh, I think it was about $17,000 at the time.
Right, that was like they came in Ferrari red and all that. There's
That's
a
right.
Ferrari red version. I remember that thing.
And so I was like, "Oh, hey, a Sim 2, right?" And he's like, "You know what projector I'm talking about?" He was like so happy to find a fellow like AV geek who actually knew what the heck he was talking about.
It's nice. It's nice when that happens. What's disappointing is when somebody's like, "Oh, I'm totally into AV," and you're like, "Really? Let's talk about it." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I got these great Bose speakers," and you're like, "Oh, now I have to find a reason not to talk to you anymore. I have to excuse myself and go to a different party. I am sorry.
I have a 6-inch subwoofer."
Oh, it packs such a punch. It's so tight because it's sealed. I sealed it with a sock. All right, let's get to the questions here. Chris read somewhere that if your subwoofer has left and right RCA inputs and you take your LFE input and use a Y splitter to plug it into both RCA inputs as opposed to just one, that the subwoofer volume would increase. Is this true? Is there any point to doing this? The times that there has been points to doing this, and okay, first of all, if it has both left and right, it doesn't really matter. You can pick one or the other. It doesn't. You can't do the both thing, and it can increase the signal.
Yeah, it depends. Some subwoofers it does, and others it doesn't. So
the one time I've heard this actually being useful is when the subwoofer wasn't turning on with the auto on, and the because of how strong the voltage was coming out the receiver or whatever device was being used, doing this solved that problem.
Okay,
that's about the only time I've ever heard this being useful. Does it do anything? Well, okay. No, I mean, because when you calibrate your sub, you're going to just turn it right back down again. So, I mean, if it increased the volume level at all, which I don't see why it really would, you're just going to end up calibrating it back down. So there's no point in doing it.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how it's wired internally. The cheap ones, honestly, inside, both the left and the right are just wired to the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's the one where if you feed both the right and left a signal, you do get a signal boost because they're both end up going to the same place inside, whereas ones that actually have a proper independent left and right, you can feed one or the other, and it's not going to make any difference.
Right.
So it depends, but I mean, there's not really any point in doing this. If you need greater signal, then you can just boost the trim level of the subwoofer, and you'll get the same effect. That's
the solution that we always recommend. It's like, okay, well, turn the volume level of your sub down, but the trim level on your receiver up. Yeah. And then you end up with the same basic thing. Josh would like us to grade his setup. A+. Done. Let's go. I don't want to grade this guy's setup. All right. He says his room size is average with 8-foot ceiling, so we have absolutely no idea the size. I mean, it could be an 8-foot ceiling and like that room in the last Batman movie. You know what I'm talking about? The one where it's just like, where are the support columns? It goes on forever.
Oh, in like the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's no support columns in that place.
Through the shipping container, and
Yeah,
it's like this low ceiling. But
what's holding that place up? I don't understand.
Lots
it's
of
very
steel.
confusing.
Lots and lots of steel.
Very confusing. So it could be that, for all we know. So, but I'm assuming that's what it is. So it's a bajillion cubic feet of concrete and fluorescent
He
lights.
sort of gives one dimension, so
all right,
we'll go from here.
Okay. He says he's roughly 5 feet from his TV and has about 6 feet behind him to the back wall. So we'll say he's got a 13-foot wide or deep room,
It's like
whatever way.
12 by 15. I don't know. That would be.
No, his
average
couch
size
is
to
probably
me.
thicker than the foot, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of assuming that's what he's talking about. So we'll give him 13 feet, but it's one long hallway. It just goes on for eternity.
Yep.
Like the Batman movie. All right. So, anyways, he has a 55-inch LG B7 OLED. Is this all good? That's fine, man. That's good TV. Yeah.
Great TV from 5 feet away. That's giving you a 43.2 degree field of view, which is very, very nice.
That's very
seems good to
big.
me.
Some people would think that was too big. I would not agree with those people. So you're fine.
Yep, I like
His
that.
receiver is a Sony STR-DN1080. That's a 7.2 channel receiver that can do 5.2.2 Atmos and DTS:X, and has HDR10 and Dolby Vision pass-through. Do we have any thoughts on this model, and do we have any tips for setting it up? It has auto setup.
It does have an auto setup.
And that auto setup it says that it adjusts the frequencies, which I have no idea what that means exactly.
It's a little graphical EQ built into it. Yeah.
So I would run the auto setup, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to do fine for everything else, and then see what whatever its correction does, and if it sounds good, then leave it on. If it doesn't sound good, turn it off.
I would go the one step further of checking the manual speaker settings, and if
Yeah.
it has set any of your speakers to large, I would
That's
manually change them to small.
And that will make more sense in a second when we talk about the speakers.
And if it has set any crossovers higher than 80 hertz, I would leave them alone. But if it has set any crossovers lower than 80 hertz, I would raise them to at least 80 hertz.
Yeah.
So that's the setup tips. As far as that model, it's a perfectly nice 7.2 AV receiver.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it.
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. He uses a Klipsch Quintet I guess 3. 5-speaker package with 2 more speakers mounted on his ceiling, plus a Klipsch Synergy 10-inch sub for a 5.1.2 setup. He thinks it sounds pretty good, but it has no other frame of reference. What do we think about these speakers in general? And if you were to upgrade something like the SVS Prime satellites, would it be a night and day difference? I don't say night and day, though. If you upgrade your sub, that would be a night and day difference. I think your sub, the Synergy 10-inch, I think goes down to like 28 hertz.
It claims 28 hertz.
So,
Claims minus 3 at 28.
Yeah, I'm guessing that usually probably 30, maybe 32, something
32.
like that. So if you got yourself a new sub, I think that would be a night and day difference. The Quintet I 5-speaker package it's like satellites, right? They're like little satellite.
Oh, yeah,
pieces.
they're definitely satellite. I mean, they only claim to play down to 120 hertz.
Well,
they're little guys.
Yeah, and I mean, night and day. It's very hard for me to say night and day. That is a
I
huge.
agree.
That's a huge thing. Would there be an improvement? I believe yes.
And I believe that in a blind comparison, you would be able to tell them apart.
I believe that as well.
I don't call that
is.
night and day, but I call it a noticeable difference for sure. And the SVS Primes, even though you're talking about the Prime satellites, so clearly he wants
Right.
small
right.
speakers, which is fine.
He's sitting real close to him, so I mean, who cares?
Exactly, but even the Prime satellites can play down to 80 hertz to give you a
Right.
lower crossover point. So I would say it's worthwhile, but it's a little bit tough because the Prime satellites are certainly by no means expensive, but they're not cheap either.
Right.
And you're getting what I would consider an upgrade, but not night and day. Right. So it's a little bit tough because he's like, what do we think of the Klipsch Quintet in general? I'm not the biggest fan of them. Now I don't think they're bad. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't really be my first choice for a really compact satellite package. I like, say, the Energy Take Classic speakers a little bit better. Yeah, the NHT Super Zeros I would definitely take over them. So don't feel bad. You don't have bad speakers by any means.
Right.
But they wouldn't be my first choice. That's my general feeling of them. That's one man's opinion. And yeah, what would I want to buy that I would be really jazzed about over these? Maybe 5 Focal Birds. That I think is a pretty big upgrade.
That would be an upgrade. But again, would it be a night and day? Like when you say night and day, it's like, to me, that is like, these are now garbage because I have heard this new thing. I don't think that, I'll be honest with you, and I know this is probably going to be controversial, but if somebody said, I have Bose Cubes, if I bought these speakers, would it be a night and day difference? I'd be like, it's not going to be night and day. I mean, you're gonna be getting a whole bunch of sound that you didn't have before, but
I'm getting closer to calling that night and day.
It's not really, though. I mean, because all those frequencies that people are used, that are most pleasing to hear, the Bose does perfectly fine.
I guess so.
It's just, it's missing on the highs and the middles and the lows and a bunch of other stuff. But the stuff that you hear sounds good. It sounds fine.
Yeah.
And if you got some more speakers, you're like, wow, I'm hearing things I never heard before. But the other ones sounded okay too. These sound better, I would think, would be the reaction of most people. I would not think that they would take them outside and put them in a bucket and then set them on fire. You know what I mean? I don't think that would happen.
But I'm like, if you got, say, Ascend HTM-200SEs, NHT Super Zeros even, I'd be like, that's a really nice, so them, the Focal Birds, the Prime satellites are pretty nice too, and they're, I don't know. It's tough.
Night and day, though, is hard to claim.
Night and day is tough, yeah.
The one thing that really worries me about that is the concerning thing. And when you're saying, well, why do we recommend these other speakers? Well, usually we're looking for our recommendations always go for neutrality, almost always. We're going for things that don't have coloration to it, which Klipsch has never claimed not to have a sound. They're never been known as being an extremely neutral speaker. But also we look at how low down and how well they're going to integrate with the sub. And almost all the speakers that we're going to recommend are going to integrate with subs very well. And then crossing over to 120 hertz is a bit high. It makes your sub do a lot of stuff it really shouldn't be doing. And also,
especially since, honestly, the quintets need to be about 150, not 120.
Yeah. So when you take all these things into consideration, that's why they fall off of our radar. Plus, we look at price. So that's why. But there's nothing wrong with your speakers. It's just, that's why we recommend these other ones over those. So he says he uses his Xbox One X as his 4K Blu-ray player. What do we think about its performance as a 4K Blu-ray player? Well, I don't have one, but I have an Xbox One. And as a Blu-ray player, it is perfectly fine because it will pass through all the stuff I want it to pass through. And I have no problems with it as a Blu-ray player. As an everything else player, I hate it so much. It angers me on the level that I just hate it so much. Like, it's the stupidest problems with that thing. But as a 4K, as a Blu-ray player, it's fine. So yes. I have no problems with saying that yours is fine as an Ultra HD Blu-ray player.
Yeah, as a Blu-ray player, it doesn't do Dolby Vision as of yet. We're hoping they'll add it, but it doesn't do that right now. And you have a OLED that could use Dolby Vision, so for the handful of discs that had Dolby Vision, you're not getting that. But that's not really the end of the world. You're still getting HDR10,
right?
And your OLED can use active HDR to give it a almost Dolby Vision look. So not worried about that. They fixed the issue when it first came out. It had raised black levels, and they fixed that with a firmware update. So that's fine. And it does the lossless audio pass-through, including Atmos and DTS-X. Some people have said it does. Sometimes that audio setting, they have to turn it off and turn it back on again to get it working properly occasionally. They're still having that weird issue, but it functions. Yeah. So overall, it's fine.
So he says he's heard us advocating using 4 ceiling speakers for Atmos. His current receiver can only use 2. So we would recommend continuing to use a 5.1.2 configuration, or would it be better to set things up as a traditional 7.1 configuration with surround backs instead? So he's got, he's got like a bunch of feet behind him.
He's got 6 feet behind him, so it wouldn't be out of place to have surround backs.
If you've already got it set up as 5.1.2, I would leave it, to be honest with you. I feel like, the surround backs, unless you've got multiple rows of seats, and it doesn't sound like he does, I I mean, you could try it either way. I
Sure.
mean, that's the thing, that you could always
Absolutely.
try it and see which one you like better. But
You could even, like, if you're like, I don't want to take them down from the ceiling or high up on
Right.
the wall because that's a hassle, you could even just take the little quintets that you have as your front, left, right, move them to the surround backs, and now you're hearing it without front, left, right, so you're really taking in how much is being added behind you.
Right.
Decide for yourself at that point if you think it's worth having them. Yeah. I can't strongly say that you must do this or that.
No,
There's
I think it
argument
would be,
for either way.
Yeah, inertia would make my decision for me. I'd be like, they're already up there.
They're already there.
I ain't taking them down. That's not happening. Let me tell you what ain't happening. All right, so what do we rate his system? A minus? Do we give him a grade?
I'm not
there a
giving him
grade?
a letter grade. I'm saying that. So I think
3.5 out of 3.5 out of 4.
Yeah. Well, maybe let's go. What would be the thing we would upgrade first if we were going to upgrade anything?
Speakers, subwoofer.
Subwoofer number 1, speakers number 2, AV receiver
Receiver
after that if you wanted to expand to 4 overheads. But if you don't worry about it. You don't have to. It's just what we recommend if someone's buying something new. Yeah.
I was reading through that Sony, the specifications for the Sony, and I looked at the features page, and I'm like, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel for features when you start bragging about your resistors.
Oh.
They had the resistors like they're all copper, blah blah blah. I'm like, what? You're talking about resistors? What else does this magical box of yours do that nobody
There's
else does?
capacitors in there too.
Ooh, the
It has
capacitors.
amplifiers.
Oh, they were like, we have really high quality DACs. I'm like, well, welcome to the year 1999. All right, Infinite Gary. Our discussion about positioning and towing in of surround back speakers gave Gary an idea. Help us all. Part of adjusting the toe in of the front, left, and right main speakers is dialing in an optimal phantom center image, correct? Yes, Gary, you are correct. So what if you were to temporarily connect the surround back speakers just as a stereo pair and then adjust their toe in and they produce the best phantom center image possible? Would that produce optimal results for the surround back speakers? I'm going to say no. And the reason is because surround back speakers are not used in the same way that front, left, and right speakers are.
Yeah.
The idea that these surround back speakers and surround speakers, for that matter, are really supposed to be a much more diffuse sound.
Yeah, that's true.
And less pinpoint accurate as far as imaging is concerned. Normally, we have pans going through them. You will occasionally have a sound that's directly coming out of them, usually like in a horror movie or something like that to scare you or to make you look or something. But the imaging is not the issue. You're not doing a ton of imaging. Now, would this be the worst thing in the world if you went through this exercise and did it? No, but you have to remember that you're not just imaging between the surround backs, you're imaging between the surround left and the surround back left, and the surround right, the surround back right. So they get that imaging right too, which I hate to break it to you, those toe ends are completely different.
Well, possibly, yeah. We don't know for sure. I mean, the main thing is that we don't phantom image behind us nearly as well as we do in front of us.
Our ears are facing the completely wrong direction for that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to this if this is an exercise you want to try and see how the results go. By all means, it's an interesting idea. I think the idea is an interesting one to try out. But I wouldn't put all my eggs in this basket. I wouldn't be like, well, since I turned around and faced the back of my room and hooked up my surround back speakers as my front, left, rights and created a good phantom center image that I know works behind me, I must leave them there. Even though when I play a sound that pans all the way around me in a continuous circle, it doesn't sound as good anymore. I'd be like, if it doesn't sound as good panning a circle around you, put them back to where that sounded better, because that's the effect that you really want to have.
I agree. Jay on Facebook. Jay says we've recommended the Focal Little Bird speakers a lot, especially for Atmos. Jay is just wondering if we would also recommend the Focal Sib speakers, S-I-B. That accessories for less are selling for $100 each, same price as the Little Birds. The Sibs are a bit bigger. They're bigger than the... Oh, I got the Birds, not the Little Birds. They're a bit bigger with a 5-inch driver instead of a 4-inch driver in the Little Birds, and the specs say they can play a bit lower and louder as a result. What do we think? I clicked on them. They looked okay to me.
Yeah, so they're actually even a little bit bigger than the Birds.
They're bigger than the Birds?
Little bit. Not very much, but a little teeny bit. Oh. So be aware. Be aware. These are not small speakers.
They look small. They look like they're little tiny. And I swear, you look at them, you're like, oh, that's a tiny little computer.
Yeah, it looks like you can
speaker.
palm them or something, right?
They are.
No.
You can palm them if you can palm a basketball. I mean, if you can palm a basketball, that's how big the back of these things are, practically.
Yeah. Yeah, no, these are a full-on bookshelf speaker. So the Sibs, they come with a mount that does, what would you say, tilt, right? They can tilt, and you can actually kind of rotate them all the way around.
Yeah.
But it's not quite as flexible as the full pivot mount of the Birds.
Right.
But it's not far off. You can still aim them pretty darn well, but it's not quite as flexible. The price is really nice. The sound quality is going to be good. I have no problem with you buying them. Just be aware of the physical size. That's the one thing I want to caution. One of the reasons we like the little Birds so much is they're still, I think, a little bit bigger than you might even anticipate from the photos, but they're closer to the size you're expecting. The little Birds are. So yeah, that's mainly the thing.
Nathan says, with the products that have been announced so far for 2018, Nathan is feeling as though this is an evolution, not revolution type of year. No giant leaps in HDR tech, no widespread support for HDR10 Plus or content available beyond Amazon streaming video, no genuine 48 gigabits per second HDMI 2.1 devices, despite some devices claiming HDMI 2.1 because of one or two features, which we talked about in a couple episodes ago. And we won't know about any big projector advancements until closer to CDI. So is there anything on our watch list that we really think is exciting for the next few weeks or months? Dude, I love evolution years and not revolution years. I love them. They're the best years. They're the years where prices start to come down. The features start to get better implemented. You know, the evolution years is the years I'm saying don't buy anything because it's all like brand new and something better is going to come out like a week from now. So evolution years are my favorite years. I like to see these, and that's what I'm really looking. That's what we talked about this last week. That's what I'm really looking for at CDI. I'm looking for that evolution in projectors, so we see where we're going to be with 4K and everything else. I want one more evolution year next year too, please. Thank you very much. Give me one more evolution year.
Oh, you know all the HDMI 2.1 nonsense is coming on like crazy next year.
They can't go to 8K this quickly. They can't go to 8K.
Doesn't matter. They're going to be plastering the stupid number everywhere, even if it has nothing to do with 48 gigabits or anything like that. It's going to be all over the place next year. So I am genuinely excited about this year's crop of TVs. I think 2018, if you have been waiting and you have held off, I think 2018 is going to be a great year to buy a 4K TV. We talked about the Vizios at the top of the show. Those are looking like really good values. That TCLP series under $1,000 for the 65, I think that's going to be a huge value. And then I'm finally impressed by Samsung's lineup this year. I haven't been really recommending them for at least a couple, maybe 3 years.
It's been a hot minute since they had plasmas. I think we haven't recommended them that much since they had plasmas. Yeah,
but this year finally. So in their QLED series, so there's the Q9F up at the top, the 2018 Q9FN. Now it's got like 480 local dimming zones. They finally have full array local dimming back. You know, the full quantum dot thing, 2000 nits, and while the price isn't like Vizio's P-Series Quantum, it does have over double the number of zones, and the price is right in line with like LG's C8 OLEDs. So it's like, here's a C8 OLED, here's a Samsung Q9FN. They get to duke it out, right?
Right.
But I would say don't sleep on the Q8FN, which is, of course, one step down, but it still has full array local dimming. It's got, I think they said 220 zones of local dimming.
Okay.
So a little bit more than the P-Series Quantum. It's like 1,500 nits, they're claiming, instead of 2,000 on that one. And the styling isn't quite as slick. You know, it doesn't have the single transparent cable that carries both power and video the way the Q9 series does. You know, it's a little bit thicker. The frame is not quite as razor thin, that type of stuff. But the price brings that down to $3,000 for the 65-incher. and it's a really good looking TV. So I'm kind of excited about what Samsung is bringing out this year. The prices are coming down, the performance is going up. That's what I like to see. So I agree. I love that evolution here. On the AV receiver side, I mean, I've already been excited about the X8500H, of course,
right?
The 13 channel AV receiver with 13 amps built in and getting my front wides back. Although $4,000 is a little bit.
I really want to see how that receiver amplifier section tests on the bench, dude. It's like, I want to see what happens when you actually plug in 13 speakers.
13
into that
speakers,
thing.
yeah. How much power can you actually?
Well,
do?
I'm not worried about so much the power because most of the time we're using like a watt or 5, but I'm worried about noise floor and stuff going up as they add all those speakers to it. So I'm very interested to see what happens with that receiver. But I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff. What we saw, maybe 5 years ago when SVS really started redoing themselves and bringing out subwoofers at cheaper prices and better price points, and with EMP tech, RBH bring out EMP tech with speakers. We saw sort of not really a price war, but we saw sort of a redefinition of the field. And right now,
like when the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers came out, I mean, that really moved the goalposts. It was like all of a sudden $130 can get you a really good pair of speakers, like genuinely good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that that's what we're going to start seeing. TVs have always been like duking it out price point, but I'm looking at projectors and wondering what's going to happen coming up at CEDIA.
Because so far the $1,500 DLPs, I'm not super impressed by those. The black levels aren't great. They don't have the wide color, so I'm looking for something better than that.
Right.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Right. All right. Jack is using an Epson 2045 projector, which is 1080p. Excuse me. He doesn't expect to get a 4K projector for a couple of years. He does expect to expand his audio system to Atmos fairly soon, though, so he's trying to decide which player to buy. He'd still like to get an Oppo, but he's wondering if the 203 Ultra HD Blu-ray player is the right choice. Does it deliver just as good a picture as for 1080p as the older 105? He's been told that the 105 can output Atmos, but then he's also been told that he won't get Atmos if he chooses the 105, so he's a bit confused on that front. And what about streaming services? Will he get better quality from the built-in services of the 105, or can you just put an Amazon Fire TV stick into the HDMI input of the 203 and get just as good a quality? Okay, to start off with, the 203, I have no problems recommending that as an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. There's been absolutely no reports of anybody that I can think of that said anything other than the fact that this does really well. Okay, so let's start there. Second, your confusion there is well-founded.
Sure.
As far as Atmos, because the fact of the matter is a Blu-ray player can put out Atmos. Blu-ray player doesn't give a crap what the metadata is on the audio. It just bit streams it out. I mean, it's all it is ones and zeros. It can send that out no problem. The problem is that the Blu-ray discs often don't have the Atmos metadata on it, the soundtrack on it.
While the Ultra HD Blu-ray version does.
So in order to get the Atmos, and that's why I bought I have an Ultra HD Blu-ray player because I wanted the Atmos. I have no intention of upgrading my projector anytime soon. I have no intention. I am fairly certain that if I plug my HDMI cable, which is already in my wall and I have no conduit to pull it through, if I plug that thing into, I don't even remember what I bought. I don't remember.
10.2 gigabits. Not an 18, most likely.
I don't know what it is, but I would be shocked if it worked. So that would be me literally stapling a HDMI cable up to my wall, and my wife wouldn't care. She'd be like, "It's your home theater. We don't." You
could spend $400 for the HDBaseT.
I would still have to run it. I can't run anything.
That's only a Cat 6 cable, though. Then
I still can't run anything in here. It's not. There's a flat roof on top of this. Okay, it's me opening up walls. And I'm not doing it. So, yeah, I did it simply to get the Atmos, and that's basically why I think your confusion comes in. It's like, well, the Blu-ray can do it, but you won't do it if you get Blu-ray. Well, if I can do it, then how come I won't get it? Because it's not there. That's basically. I mean,
there are Blu-rays, regular 1080p Blu-rays with Atmos soundtracks, and there are a handful with DTS-X soundtracks. They do exist. Right. It's just we're seeing quite a few releases now where only the Ultra HD Blu-ray is getting the Atmos of the DTS-X soundtrack, and the regular Blu-ray is still getting DTS HD Master Audio. I don't know why they're doing that. It's not a technical hurdle by any means, but that seems to be the case. So, given that what you're talking about is you want to upgrade to Atmos and you want to get discs with Atmos on them, it kind of makes the decision for you. You're going to want to get an Ultra HD Blu-ray player so that you can buy the Ultra HD versions of the discs that have the Atmos soundtrack on them. That kind of decides it for you. So, to me, the real question then becomes, do you want to pay the $550 for a 203? And we know Oppo is not, I mean, they're saying they're going to support it, but we don't know for how long, and it's not going to be forever, because they're closing down their North American operation. Right. So the question to me is, do you want to get that, or do you want to, say, get a Sony, like the X700 that Tom got, or the X800, which is still available? And the only thing the X800 lacks is Dolby Vision, which doesn't matter for projectors.
Right. So,
the X800 has streaming services built in with HDR support. It's got the nice build quality, and it has, so when we were going through the settings on Tom's X700, there were some of the settings that the X800 has to let you lower or raise the brightness of the image overall for when it's converting HDR down to SDR. And I didn't see those in the X700 menus where they are in the X800 menus. Now, so far, Tom's saying X700 is looking fine on his projectors. So, and it does have a setting to say, are you using this on the TV or on a projector? What size of screen? So I'm betting they kind of built the brightness thing into that. But the X800 gave you like a direct thing where you just like lower or raise the brightness of the entire image and made it very easy.
I would probably dim it a little bit if I had the option. Now, I still have the option of doing that, but I don't want it to do it overall. I just want to do it on the Ultra HD Blu-rays that I play.
Yeah. So an X800, that would be less than half the price of a 203 and gives you all the features that you'd really want. To me, that's the real question. Now, if you're just like, you know what, I just want an Oppo, I'd be like, just get the 203.
That's a perfectly fine thing. Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, is like, just because you buy, I mean, even the Amazon Fire Stick, right? Every one of these devices has like a different relationship with all the different streaming services. Like some of them can stream some things, and get the Dolby Vision and everything else, and some of them can't. And, and then some of them get updated and some of them don't. So
when Apple finally gets Bitstream audio going, I'm going to be all over that Apple TV 4K. Because it does everything else. I'm like, just get the Bitstream going, Apple. How hard can it be?
I did get an email from a listener, and I don't remember who it was, but he said, "Oh yeah, their X700, the YouTube. Sometimes that breaks. You have to sign out of YouTube and sign back in order to make it work." I'm like, I can't sign out because it won't load. He's like, "Oh, all right. Well, the solution is factory reset." I'm like, I'm not factory resetting it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I get to go through the settings and find the lip sync again. Woohoo!
And I've got my wife. I have my friend. He needs to sign into Hulu on that thing. Once that happens, I'll factory reset it right before that. All right, the last thing. Oh yeah, we already answered that. Okay, Alan.
Very similar question here, actually.
Thanks us for our previous answers to his Denon X4300H receiver and what we think is the best approach when considering a 4K HDR capable projector. No idea what you're talking about, dude. At the moment, he does not own an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, but he figures he'll need one sooner rather than later. If you have Atmos, you will. And with Oppo shutting down, he isn't sure if he should get an Oppo before they're all gone. He still listens to some SACDs, and he still has some movies on DVD that he likes to watch now and then. So good DVD conversion and SACD support are features he'd like to have. Can the less expensive Sony players handle the task, or would it justify the $550 price point of the Oppo? Well, yeah, doesn't even the X700 does SACDs?
It does, yes. So and the X800 does both SACDs and DVD audio. It's a universal player. The X800 is.
So you could get the Sony players, and that would be fine. As far as up converting from DVD, this is not, believe me, up converting from DVD or from Blu-ray or DVDs up to 4K or whatever, or up to Blu-ray or 1080p, which is what you're doing right now before you get your projector. It's not brain surgery. I mean, these this is quite easy. It's not like going from VHS to high def, where you're like, there are so many missing pixels here. I have to come up with so many things to try to make something look good. It's really not that hard, and I think they all do it pretty well. And yes, the Oppo probably does it a little bit better. like objectively better, but subjectively, I don't think you're gonna notice the difference.
Yeah, when the Wirecutter made their pick for Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and they picked the Sony X800, that was one of the things. They're like, yeah, its upscaling is solid. Sony has very good upscaling. Yeah. They do a good job with their upscaling. So yeah, I'd go for an X800. You know, if you're gonna have a projector, I'd probably go for an X800. It has all the features I'd look for in an Ultra HD Blu-ray player to connect to a projector.
So he says, why is Dolby Vision not a concern for projectors again? Having all these different HDR formats is confusing. No kidding.
Fair enough.
HDR, okay, so Dolby Vision it has to know how much light is coming off the screen.
Yeah.
In order to do what it does. It doesn't know how bright your projector is. It does not know the gain on your screen. It does not know the distance. It does not know
the ambient
light in your room. It doesn't know any of that stuff. So it can't do it. Rob and I talked about this one time. I don't think we talked about it on the podcast. I think we talked about it afterwards, about how there could theoretically be a projector, like a Dolby Vision kit or something, it would require like test patterns to come out of the projector and a light meter associated with it in order for Dolby Vision to work with your projector. Yeah. It would be $1 bajillion. And it probably wouldn't work very well.
It's something I could see one day being a custom installer feature. I don't know if it will be, but it's the type of thing that could be implemented. But if I was
a custom installer, I would be begging Dolby for this.
Oh, yeah.
This is a money-making opportunity right here. Because right now, aside from people who are just really, really worried about getting the perfect, accurate picture, most of the projectors and TVs that are coming out this day, you send them into theater mode and warm one or two or whatever, and change the backlight a little bit here and there based on things you read online, and you're like 95% of the way to perfect picture.
Yeah.
These guys are begging for something to make it so that they can sell things to people in a Dolby Vision package that you cannot get outside of a custom installer.
Right.
Is perfect.
Kind of like how like when Odyssey Pro was around.
Right, exactly.
Similar type of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So the very simple answer of why is Dolby Vision not a concern for projectors is because there is not a single consumer projector with Dolby Vision right now. So that's the super simple answer. That's why you don't need a player with Dolby Vision for a projector. There's no projectors you can buy as a consumer that make any use of it. So yeah, could there ever be? Theoretically, but you'd have to be able to set all these variables, and I bet they would limit it to licensed, trained technicians and installers to do it.
Yeah. So if he wants to be sure he'll have no issues with 4K and HDR going into his projector in the future, what do his HDMI cables need to be labeled? Is high speed enough? Well, they have to pass like 18 point whatever it is, right?
18 gigabits a second is what you're looking for, which is high speed premium. Yeah. That is the label you are looking for, is high speed premium. Now, I have not seen any high speed premium regular copper HDMI cables longer than 25 feet. Most of them aren't longer than 15 feet. So being a projector setup, it's entirely possible you have longer than 25 feet. So between 25, or maybe even down at 15 or 20 feet, between that and upwards of, say, 50 feet, you can use the active HDMI cables like what Monoprice sells. Those ones require a powered output, but you can use that. And then over 50 feet, I'd say you'd want to use a fiber optic HDMI cable.
No matter what you do, if you install it in the wall, you want to use conduit so you can switch it out, because who knows what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, but you're looking for high-speed premium if it's a regular copper cable. And if it is an active cable or an optical cable, a fiber optic cable where they don't label them as high-speed or high-speed premium or anything like that, you're looking for it to say 18 gigabits bandwidth. That's what you're looking for.
Lance started his... Oh, hold on a second. Sorry. Hold on. I just have to... Yep. It's past 10 p.m. I have to... Why won't I change my settings on my Ecobee? Because I never think about it until it's too late. Believe me,
can't you even change it for like one day out of the week? Isn't that
I can change? It needs to be changed. The whole thing needs to be changed. I need to reprogram the whole thing. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
It's not like a Nest where it learns itself.
No, it's not. But I kind of wish I had a Nest now, but whatever. Lance started his TV upgrade journey with the Sony X900E. When he learned that that model would not be getting Dolby Vision and he had a few issues with its picture quality, he considered an X930E. He ended up trying a flagship Sony Z9D. Then he tried an LG C7 OLED. Jeez, these roll off the tongue. And he's decided to stick with the OLED. He says that he feels as though he wants to rewatch everything in his collection since he was missing details with this old TV that the OLED is showing him now. Now, you see, this is a guy right here. Let's go back to our night and day. This is a guy right here who is now experiencing a night and day conversion. I do not believe that everybody would have that same experience. I believe many people would, but I don't believe that everybody would. I remember that happening when I got a DVD player, but it did not happen since then, you know.
Yeah, going from DVD to Blu-ray, nice little upgrade, but it wasn't enough to make you go, I got to rebuy everything I own.
Right.
But I remember this feeling. Like, I remember not even when I got my SVS subs, before that, you know, when I got maybe my first HSU sub. You know, that was an experience that was so different from everything that came before. I'm like, I kind of want to rewatch every movie I own to properly hear the bass now. Yeah. So, yeah, I know what you mean.
So he's got a bunch of questions for Rob. He uses an HTPC, which is a home theater PC. So he's interested in the feature where you can rename the HDMI inputs. And if you name one of them PC, that activates the TV's ability to accept a 444 chroma signal, which it doesn't do otherwise. That seems to work just fine for his PC. His graphics cards gives him all the output options, just like a 4K computer monitor when he activates this mode. But he also has other sources. All of his sources are plugged into his AV receiver, so he only has one HDMI connection between his receiver and the TV. Plus, he's using an audio return channel, and he's noticed some of the colors don't look quite right for his other sources. So is that because of the PC setting? What should he do? Why would the PC thing mess up his other sources? That doesn't make sense.
I'm not sure why, but you do get increased color banding, and if it is an HDR source, for some reason it doesn't come out looking quite right.
For 444 through the HTPC, or for everything after you've...
When the TV is set to the PC mode and it's expecting a 444 signal.
Okay. Now I understand what's happening here.
Yeah, because when you relabel it to PC, it means the TV is now anticipating a 444 signal. And what your other sources are sending is a 422 signal.
Right.
And that is assuming one other setting has been set, which normally clicks on automatically, but that is the HDMI Ultra HD Deep Color setting, which must also be activated for that input. So a few things to check on, but that Ultra HD HDMI Deep Color is almost certainly set to on. Otherwise, the 444 wouldn't work in the first place.
Right.
But yeah, you do tend to get more banding, and HDR sources don't look right when you're putting them into the PC input, and it's anticipating 444. Now, why is it important to have 444 for your PC? Well, if you chroma subsample down to 422 or 420, there are instances when you're using your computer where, for some reason, someone has chosen a colored text, you know, red text or blue text or something like that, even on a white background, but more predominantly, let's say it's, you know, blue text on a green background or something awful like that. Okay. If the image has been chroma subsampled, you lose a bunch of detail in those colors, and you can't read the text anymore. So when you're connecting a computer to your monitor, it's very nice to be able to send 444, because then no matter what, you'll be able to read text clearly, even if it's colored text on a colored background.
So when you're navigating to a GeoCities site or a MySpace, you accidentally find yourself in the dregs of MySpace, whatever's left over of that thing.
Now, we're laughing at that a bit because exactly how often do you see colored text on a colored background anymore? Most websites have figured out, let's just use black text on a white background, or maybe white text on a black background.
I hate those sites with the white text and the black background.
But we've mostly figured out to just have a white background with black text on it, which will look perfectly fine with a 422 signal coming out of your PC. No problem when it's black text on a white background, or vice versa. So there's two options here. One is you don't choose the PC mode. You leave it as a regular HDMI input. Now your PC, your graphics card, will not give you all the options. You won't have the option of outputting straight RGB or YCbCr 444 anymore. You will want to choose 422. And the vast majority of anything you're going to look at on the computer, especially if you're using your computer to play videos, those are completely going to look fine. Your videos will completely look fine, and almost everything else will look fine too. You might find some colored things on colored backgrounds that are slightly blurrier than if you looked at it on a PC monitor. That's solution number one. Solution number two would be you would have to feed your PC to a different input than all of your other sources.
And then use audio return channel to bring it back down.
Well, I mean, what you could do since, did he say which AV receiver he's using here?
It doesn't say on here.
He probably said in another email, but he's got a pretty high-end system. If you have two HDMI outputs, it's not like there's any compatibility issues. You know, this is both HDMI outputs going to the same display. It's just one of those inputs you're going to set as being a PC input to accept 444, and you're only ever going to use that with your computer. And then the other one, which I would keep as your main one, you're going to leave it as not a PC input, and all your other sources are going to feed that.
So when you use your universal remote or whatever to select a source, it also changes it. Just like it would normally would on the TV, it just changes the source on the TV.
Just changes the input.
That's the solution right there.
Yeah.
That's the one I would go for. So he says when he watched some HDR demo content off of YouTube on the Z9D, there were some scenes of fire in particular where he could almost swear you could feel the heat since the fire looks so realistic. But on the C7 OLED, it doesn't give him that effect, and the colors look a bit cartoony rather than completely realistic. Is that something he can fix in the settings? Is this also part of the 444 thing, or is that...
Shouldn't be, because that's not using an HDMI input. That's the built-in YouTube app.
Oh, it's a built-in app. Well, it sounds like an app issue, to be honest with you.
Well, so, I mean, part of it is you're not going to get the same effect with fire because the OLED is a little less than half as bright as the Z9D. The Z9D was like 1,800 nits. So it's, you know, the OLED is like 1,000 nits dimmer. It's not even half as bright. So that, you know, feeling like you can almost, you know, imagine that the heat is real. Yeah, that's part of it. That's one of the advantages. This is the thing Samsung keeps talking about, right? They're like, we can hit 2,000 nits. We're so much better than OLED. And Vizio's like, well, we're almost as good as OLED, but we're cheaper and we're brighter. So I like Vizio's take better. But it's true. I mean, that's an advantage. That's something OLEDs can't do right now. They just can't get that bright. Now, why the colors would be looking a bit cartoony, I think it might be because, so here's an annoying thing with the OLEDs, all right? You plug in your HDMI sources, you get your picture mode calibrated the way that you want for SDR content, right? And then you switch over to HDR content, and you have to do all your settings again. And then you switch to Dolby Vision content, and you have to do all your settings again.
Oh.
Then you switch over to Netflix, and you have to do all the settings for all three again. And then you switch to YouTube, and you have to do all the settings for all three again. All right? So
you can't just set a universal one for everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can save this. You can say apply this to all inputs, but you still have to manually go in and select the picture mode. Otherwise, it defaults to whatever the default picture mode is for each source.
Ugh.
It doesn't remember that. Like, let's say you set up your ISF dark room because that's the most accurate one. And that's the one you calibrated, and you're like, okay, apply this to all inputs. Now you switch over to Netflix. It doesn't remember you were on ISF dark mode. It goes back to the APS, like automatic picture thing. Like, that's the one it sets, and the colors are all blown out on that. So I think it just might be that double check what picture mode you're on in YouTube, because it's not going to remember which picture mode you used for Netflix, which one you used for your HDMI input, anything else. I think that's all it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, everybody's going to strap in for this one because this one takes a while.
Yes.
This is from a different Rob. That I know. I'm starting to think that Robs are verbose.
Could be.
It's a thing.
Tom's been preparing.
There we go. First, Rob just wanted to share his nearly completed theater. He's still waiting to purchase a projector and a screen, so he's using a 50-inch plasma for now. But the construction is all done, the sound system is installed, so he wanted to detail the advice he followed, the advice he ignored, and the mistakes he made in an effort to hopefully help other folks who are building home theaters. He made his equipment rack himself and controls everything with a Harmony Hub and a Google Home. And, of course, he has his DIY absorption panels with prints from Spoonflower. He had posted this on our website. We have this on his website. That's his DIY stuff. That was before, of course, they cracked down on copyrighted images, so he has a bunch of posters that are illegal, and the FTC's come to get you. FTC? That's the flower people. Anyways, there you go. The speakers appear in Optimus, Monoprice Caliber, and dual subs, one SVS PB12 NSD, and a PC2000. So, here he says, this is the advice that he followed. This is the one he followed. The original room was approximately 20 by 20 with a 5 by 20 utility room on the back side. He took out the wall separating the two rooms to make one rectangular 25 by 20 foot room to help with acoustics, because if not, it was a box. So that's good, I suppose. Whatever. So he ran 1-inch flexible tubing to every location he could think of where he might need to run new wires. So it was a projector, display, new speaker locations, all that. He pre-wired all 4 subs of the room with subwoofer connections. He added a second sub. He went with the SR6011 instead of the more expensive Denon X43 or 4400. He put the equipment rack in the closet attached to the game room. This also freed up the area in the back for a small bar. He went with an oversized HVAC ducting for the game room, which is, I guess, next door. There's not been any problems with temperature control as far as he can tell, and you can only barely hear the system operating. He kept his existing speakers and spent that money on the room instead. That's because rooms cost money. Made sure all of his HDMI cables were rated for 18 gigabits per second, and the first ones he ordered from Amazon just said high speed. It turns out they were only rated for 10.2, so he sent those bad boys back. So that was the advice he did follow. Here's the advice he didn't follow. So he didn't go with a drop ceiling, which is something that I'm sure that we suggested. He didn't like the look, and especially didn't want to pay more for a look that he didn't like. He installed surround back speakers, which is something that we may have said not to do. He had the extra speaker wire and a pair of Monoprice in-wall caliber series speakers. Was less than the $30 during the sale they were running, so he felt like that was a no-brainer. He used Roxul Safe and Sound in the adjoining walls and ceilings instead of the pink installation. And he says, judging from the other finished rooms in the basement, this made no discernible difference in dampening the sound. It just hit his wallet a little bit harder. So that's what he did when he shouldn't have. He went with 12-gauge speaker wire instead of 14-gauge in some places. So he found out the hard way that it's really hard to work with. It doesn't fit into banana plugs easily. And for the lengths of cables he's using, it probably makes no difference. And if you were me and I was editing this, I would have struck out probably, because it makes no difference. So he went with a lighter pink color. The room is multi-use and he didn't want a cave feeling when just hanging out and shooting pool, but he says he'll most likely paint the screen wall a darker color in the end. But he didn't go whole hog with soundproofing because it just ended up not being in the budget, which was perfectly fine. So he did make a couple of mistakes. So these are them. He did not triple check. These are the mistakes I would have made, by the way. Like every one of these, I was like, yep, I would have done that. So mistakes he did make. He did not triple check measurements and ended up with the outlets for the display 12 inches higher than they should be and thus visible with the TV hung at the correct height. It's difficult to move the outlets because he has 2x10s between the center wall studs to make it really easy to hang a wall mount without the need of drywall anchors. The temporary fix was to add a faux panel behind the TV to cover up the outlet. He ordered his Keystone wall plates from various places, Monoprice and Amazon mostly. The sizes are different, and apparently white has a different color meaning to different manufacturers.
Yup.
So he eyeballed, this is me, dude. He eyeballed the power outlet distances above the floor. There's a 2 to 3 inch variance in heights of the outlets throughout the room, and his OCD can't stop seeing it. Yeah.
Whenever I've seen electricians do that, all they do is like they have a hammer on their hip, and they just put the height of the hammer, and that's where every outlet goes. Is the height of their hammer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So he winged it in designing the cove lighting. It didn't come out perfectly smooth with the ceiling. He purchased a floating shelf from Home Depot for a center channel, and the speaker is too heavy for the shelf. So I guess that's down. Decided against the in-floor outlets for the theater chairs, and now the $200 it would have cost to not have a power cord running across the floor seems so worth it. So instead of putting outlets on the ground there where he could just plug in his chairs, he's now got a power cord going across, which is, He forgot to wire for lighting above the front two absorption panels, so that's a pain. He forgot to wire for a 2.5 millimeter connector to the projector and display for the remote control repeaters.
Yeah.
You can do IR Blaster to fix that.
That was one of the things that the drop ceiling would have fixed.
Right. Went with a double door for the entrance to make it easier to move things in and out, but the door location meant that the side surround left speaker had to be placed above it, which is higher than ideal. And it isn't necessarily a mistake, but he did a lion's share of the work himself and had a completely unrealistic timetable to finish the project. Yeah. So we got pictures of the room here. You can see how he used the more expensive paneling there, insulation in the walls. You can see, is that the center channel above the TV? Is that what I'm seeing there?
No, that is the faux panel above his TV.
Okay.
His center channel's on a stand just beneath the shelf that he installed that he thought was going to hold his center channel.
I can't see it.
Yeah,
this is a nice looking room, though. Oh, I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
This is a very nice looking room. I can tell you right now, there's a whole lot of custom installers who do not like your wire management.
There could be that. Yeah, he did an interesting thing where he's like he does network stuff.
Yeah.
So when he does network stuff, he likes a patch panel up at the top.
Right.
So everything, all the individual units that are close by go into the patch panel, and the patch panel feeds out to everywhere else. So he did the same thing for the speaker wires. He has like a speaker wire patch panel up at the top. So the AV receiver feeds the patch panel, and then from the patch panel goes to the in-wall wires. So it's a somewhat unusual way to do it, but it works.
It's perfectly fine. It's fine. Yeah, it's perfectly fine. So he's got Xbox 360 and a Xbox One, it looks like, there as well.
That's right.
And some amps.
I like that rack. He said he built that himself, so that's
looks
good
real
looking.
nice.
Yep.
Real nice. All right. That was just informational. We haven't gotten to the questions yet.
But we do like to share results, right?
Yes.
I mean, he's been working on this for a couple of years.
It looks really nice. Where are the there's the panels. So if you're looking at these pictures on the YouTube video, he's got movie posters all over his walls.
Mm-hmm.
And there are I can't see, what is that yellow one? Does that say the Cube?
There's Luke Cage.
Oh, Luke Cage, that's what that is. Okay, so he's got like all sorts of every single one of those is a DIY absorption panel that he built himself.
For anyone who's like, I can't put up absorption panels, they're too ugly. I'm like, were you planning to have any kind of decoration? Because you can kill two birds with one stone, and here's a great example of it.
I love it, man.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to have some of these panels in my room, to be honest with you. That'd be great. Looks really good. All right, let's get to those questions. Rob went with appearing Intimus speakers back in 2008, and since then, he hasn't really critically listened to other speakers. He's just enjoyed what he has. That's a good idea. A friend of his spent way more on his audio setup, and his room EQ wizard measurements look textbook. But despite the difference in price, the only obvious difference Rob could pick out is that the system's friend can play louder than his. Other than that, they don't really sound that very different. Rob considers his Aperion Intimus speakers to be pretty normal design. Soft dome tweeter, cone woofer, MDF box, nothing out of the ordinary. So what differentiates things like horn tweeters, ribbon tweeters, or more exotic materials or designs? He keeps coming across descriptions of different tone or timbre, or speakers having different character or coloration of the sound. But aren't all speakers simply trying to reproduce real live sounds as accurately as they can? Wouldn't that mean most speakers should sound a lot more similar than different? Well, the last thing that you said is most of the speakers we recommend are trying to sound as accurate as possible. But that doesn't mean that all speaker manufacturers are trying to make 100% accurate speakers.
Definitely not.
They have a sound profile that they think is more realistic than just being neutral. And they may be right, because their speakers are going into rooms, and those rooms affect the sound. So they may be changing their frequency response in order to so that when you put it in the actual room, it tends to sound better to people. That may be true, but we are not those people. Our rooms are, we're doing, and you are as well, doing our best to make sure that our rooms do as little as possible to the sound, or we optimize them for so that the room, we're trying to take the room out of it as much as we can. So should speakers sound more similar than different? I mean, I think they should. I think that when you start looking at speakers like RBH is a perfect example. If you look at their lineup, you can take any speaker in their lineup almost and put it next to any other speaker in their lineup, and they will play well together. It will not be a complete tonal mismatch because they are trying to be accurate with everything that they build. Therefore, what are the differences? How loud they can play, how low they can play, how high they can play, how accurate they can be, how clear, how much
the transient response, how
fast it is, that sort of thing. You're paying for that. You're paying for that with RBH. And if you took I remember I had this RBH center channel that I could put it within almost any speaker. And if I put it with the speaker and the speaker didn't sound right next to it, if it didn't go right, if it sounded tonally a lot different, I was like, something's wrong with this speaker because that RBH is fine. that one I know is fine. So something's wrong with you. So I mean that'll tell you right there kind of what's going on. And the different, like we're just like, I have a soft dome tweeter. That makes no difference. That makes no difference. There are fantastically accurate, ridiculously expensive soft dome tweeters that exist in this universe that high-end manufacturers like RBH and others use all the time. Do you have to have a diamond tweeter in order for your speaker to be better than another speaker? No. You can have a diamond tweeter that sounds like garbage, or beryllium tweeter, or a folded horn, or a folded ribbon, or a horn, or a electrostatic panel. Nothing is a panacea. You can't just put this tweeter in there. It's like now it's good. Now it'll be good, because there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of speakers that I would say sound more similar than different.
Every speaker that comes out of Canada pretty much sounds the same. It's just true. I hate to say it, but I mean, a lot of times that's why people were so excited about Axiom all those years ago when they first came out, because Axiom was selling speakers that sounded a lot like Paradigm speakers for a fraction of the price.
Not anymore, but
not anymore, but they were at the time. So that's why people got so excited about them.
You take Paradigm, PSB, Energy, Axiom, you put them against RBH, Aperion, Ascend, SVS, like could you potentially pick out some small differences in really critical listening? Yes. But would I call them far more similar than different? Also, yes.
Yeah.
For sure, I would call them far more similar than different. But there are speakers that most definitely have their own character, their coloration of the sound.
Golden Ear comes to mind. Golden Ear, Bang & Olufsen, Bose, Klipsch. They come to mind. And I'm not going to lump in like budget speakers with this either, because a lot of times the budget speakers have a sound because they don't have the money.
They just can't play all the sounds properly. But I mean, with those, I mean, a lot of it goes back to the woe-begotten days of really not understanding how bass works. And so they were designing it for their room, their test facility. And in their test facility, they got the right results, but they're attempting to play down to 30 or 20 hertz or something like that. And you put it in another room, and it doesn't sound the same, because that's not how bass works. But they didn't understand that at the time, and a lot of these companies are kind of still holding on to that approach, unfortunately, in my opinion. But that's okay. That's their thing. And if it happens to work well in your room for the things that you like, there's nothing wrong with liking them. They can sound perfectly fine.
And I mean, when we talk about a speaker manufacturer in particular, like Golden Ear or somebody like that has a particular sound, or Bang & Olufsen, I think is even a better example. That has a particular curve that they're going for. I visited them. They told me they have a curve. They are going for a curve.
And it's not a flat line.
It's not a flat line. They would not tell me what the curve was, but they have it. It's proprietary. It's theirs. And they are they're not interested in not having that curve. And
that's
not only
their thing. That's their signature.
If you've been listening to that for a long time, you're not going to be interested in not having that curve either. That's going to be something that you're going to be interested in having. So that's just something that goes along. I'm sorry, I lost my place on my picture on my thing. I'm trying to scroll to it. That's why I'm starting to
just
meander
above
a
number
bit.
10, just above Damien.
I'm getting there. It's so far down.
Well, I did just want to say, so you were mentioning like your friend's system, he paid multi-thousands of dollars more than you did, but you're saying like one obvious thing it can do is play a lot louder than my system. That's not nothing.
Yeah.
If you need that, you will probably have to pay more money to get it. It's not a super simple thing to get a speaker to be able to play louder without distorting. Every speaker will start to distort at some point. It has a limit of its frequency response, how high and low it can play, and how loud it can play those frequencies. Every speaker has that limit, and to increase that limit costs something. You know, it's often
it's not
size.
nothing.
It's not nothing.
You're not just, and you're also not paying simply for the sound. You know, if we were doing that, all speakers would look like HSU ugly box speakers. So
they're still not that ugly.
They're ugly. So you're paying for aesthetics. You're paying for form factor. You're paying for colors. Sometimes, if you want, so we're gonna have this in a minute. Somebody's gonna want white speakers.
Yep.
These are things that you pay for. You have to pay for them, and it changes the cost of the speaker as well.
But something like, why would you want a horn tweeter? Well, a horn tweeter is one way to be able to play louder. Without having to use drastically more watts to get there.
Right.
Maybe that's what you want to do. Why might you use a ribbon tweeter? Maybe you want really fast transient response. That's one thing that ribbon tweeters tend to do particularly well because they have hardly any mass to them at all. So it's easier to stop them when the signal says stop. So these things have some characteristics. And if that's the characteristic you want to employ in your speaker design, it might be advantageous to use that type of piece of equipment. But everything is a trade-off. Everything is a choice. You don't get a free lunch in any of these, and you're choosing what characteristics are best for the design you're trying to make.
So lastly, and we already kind of answered this, but I'll just read it. Why would anyone purposely engineer a speaker to be extra warm or extra bright or whatever? If a listener prefers that, couldn't they just do it with EQ? Or does he, meaning Rob, misunderstand the limitations of what EQ can do to the sound? You're not misunderstanding anything. But like we said, a lot of speaker designers, or not a lot, some manufacturers have designed their speaker with a certain sound in mind, and they do that for reasons that are as varied as there are speaker manufacturers. Perfect example is Macintosh. I remember Macintosh had a display at CDO one year that we would walk by. We had to walk by. It was right in the middle of a stupid room. And it was a line array of 30 or 40, 1.25-inch drivers, in one box, one big, long, thin box going very, very tall. And then there was another box next to it, which was the woofer section or whatever, the subwoofers or whatever. And they were playing this thing, and it was so ungodly bright. It was so bright. And one of the Audioholics guys theorized that, the only people that can afford Macintosh speakers are old, mostly deaf people.
Yeah. People with hearing loss.
So they would prefer to have a really extended or accentuated high end for that reason.
To counteract their high frequency hearing loss.
I don't know. That doesn't sound real to me, what you just said. But there was no denying that those speakers were painfully bright. I mean, and this was in a huge open space, and we are 30 feet away from them as we're walking by, and we're like, dang, dude, that is bright. So
there are limitations to what EQ can do, though, because at some point the speaker just says, you can tell me to play louder, I just can't.
Right.
So there are some limitations in that sense. Yeah, you can keep altering the signal, but the speaker might just not be able to respond to it the way you're telling it to. So there is that. But yeah, last comment I'll make is that, one of my friends, he wanted to get a home theater set up, 5.1, that's all.
Okay.
But, he had a budget, so I got him the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers, sub from Fluence, because we're in Canada, and that was easier and cheaper, Onkyo receiver. I set it up for him.
It's immediately caught on fire, right?
No, it's been okay. But yeah, so, I set it up for him, did all the calibration, positioning, set up his room for him. And so I've got my, whatever, $12,000 worth of speakers and, $4,000 worth of subs or whatever it is like that. Do I think my theater sounds better than his? Yes, but it is frustratingly, annoyingly close. It's not the order of magnitude more money spent.
You want it to be, yeah.
It's like getting good equipment set up properly can get you really satisfying results for not a ton of money.
That's right. All right, Damien. Damien says that he will take our advice and he won't decide on a new set of speakers until he's actually in his new house and knows the dimensions of his new theater. I guess we talked about this last week. That isn't stopping him from thinking about the external amp, though. Of course it's not. His current receiver is an Onkyo 646. It does not have pre-out, so there's no way to add an amp to it. He thought his eventual goal would be get separate. Dedicated. You spent some time on AVS forum, sir. Don't lie. A dedicated 7.2.4 pre-pro with 11 channels of separate amplification, but then we and the guys over at Audioholics keep recommending getting a 7.2.4 receiver and that's adding an amp for the front channels or maybe a 5-channel amp at most. That would be less expensive. So which receiver and amp combo do we recommend most highly and why? We recommend you wait till you get your house. Will you stop asking? You get your house?
Well, we don't have to wait for the house to get the new receiver and the new amp.
Well, yeah, you might. You don't know what he's going to end up. Well, he might get into this house and it's like,
there's nowhere to put an Atmos setup.
Yeah. There's nowhere to put this thing. Or it might be, I've got this humongous basement and I'm going to turn it into 40 seats of home theater. We're like, oh yeah, maybe separates makes sense. You know what I mean? At that point, it's turn it off. Let's go turn it off. There's things to be said, but yeah, okay. So this is going to change because CD is coming up, and CES is not that far away, honestly. And when it does, we are going to be looking at who knows what receivers and stuff. We know some of them that are coming out, and what's going to be accessories for less at that time because it's going to change. But 7.2.4 is what he says he wants.
Yep, that's what he's hoping for.
So that's what I have. So I guess you can get the X4300, X4400.
Yes.
Or the Marantz. Is it the
6012?
12
yep.
or 11?
Yeah, 6011 would work too.
Yeah,
yep.
If you can find either one of those would be the standout recommendations for right now.
Yeah, Accessories for Less doesn't have X4300Hs anymore, but One Call does have refurbished X4300Hs for $800. So that would be your least expensive way to get an AV receiver that can do the 11 speaker processing, the 7.2.4 processing. $800, it's a pretty good deal, and that's a really good AV receiver. And there really was no change from the X4300H to the X4400H except for the 4400 has Oro 3D built in out of the box. Ooh. Whereas if you want to add Oro 3D to the 4300H, it's a $200 separate upgrade. But don't do that because there's no Oro 3D content really. So yeah, that's the least expensive. That's why I would recommend that one. And then yeah, he had a little add-on about the right. what he was going to do.
So he's thinking he might go with a Monoprice Monolith 7-channel amp. This man wants an amplifier so bad.
He does.
You don't need it. Well, you might. That's the thing.
Well, he's gonna need at least a 2-channel amp.
That's right. He'll need at least a 2-channel amp. Now, if you are like me and you set up your and remember, just because. Well, anyways, don't mind. Sometimes they don't let you use a 2-channel amp for the things you want to use the 2-channel amp for.
Yes.
I wanted to use it.
Use it for your front, left, right. You'd be all right.
You'll be okay there. So you just could do that. That's what I would do. Anyways, he was thinking he might go for the Monolith 7-channel amp, the new model that has XLR inputs, which you totally do not need. But he wouldn't need the XLR inputs for if his pre-pro is a receiver, right? That is true.
That is right.
I mean, you could still use it, but you're going to get a RCA to XLR cable. 0 sense whatsoever. On top of that, all the Monolith amps seem to be out of stock. Yeah, it's because we think they're going that those are not going to be around anymore.
I don't know. I'm a little bit worried about ATI there.
So what amp should he investigate, and should he invest in one now even though he can't use it? It's not like an amp is going to become obsolete due to new features, right? You are right that amps do not become obsolete, but...
And you will need a 2-channel amp at the very least.
But... And I'm going to say this, but you're not going to listen to me, but I'm going to say this. And that is, you are thinking about buying something that you literally cannot plug in and test to see if it works before its warranty expires. Why would you do that? I can understand if you're getting all your stuff and your room's almost ready and stuff like that. Yeah. But if you cannot even test, you can't even test it out.
Well, maybe he buys the refurbished 4300H, and then
maybe he does, and that would be fine too. But I'm just saying that you could still end up needing something completely different by the time you get into your house.
Well, I mean, he could just take the left and right outputs of a CD player and test each channel to make sure the amp works.
Well, he could, or use Zone 2 on his receiver or whatever to do it too.
There
I mean, he could do it. I'm
he
not
could
saying
test
that.
it, at least for functioning.
But what I'm saying is, this is... I was in the same boat this guy was. I was ready to purchase. Now, of course, I had a wife who straight up shut me down. Said, nope,
that helped.
Ain't happening. But I took great joy in having a spreadsheet that I updated every time a new thing came out. Every time a new amp came out, a new subwoofer was reviewed, I would take that and then A/B it in my head, the price, the pros, and the cons against everything that was on my list. By the time I bought my first round of speakers, I knew without a shadow of a doubt where I was. I ordered everything within like 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was like, "Yeah, I think we can order stuff now." She didn't even finish.
Boom, click.
And I was already in. And she's like, "Oh, where are you?" Like, she literally said, "Where are you?" I just pressed send because I had bought a refurbished Denon 3805 or 3508, whatever it was, whatever the one that was so hot that one year was, and I bought an entire 7-channel. Axiom system and an EP500 subwoofer, and it was done. I mean, I had it all set up. And the thing that I had that you will not have if you buy this amp right now is I had peace of mind knowing that I knew that what I purchased was at that moment the very best. You will now have an amp that's sitting on a box on the floor of your house for unknown months/years as you were waiting to buy your house and then set everything up. And during that time, all sorts of new stuff is going to come out. Now, is amplifiers going to change that much between now and then? Nope. But the price could come down. You could find something that's 3-channel or 5-channel for the price of the thing that you just bought that was 2-channel. Or if you buy a 7-channel one, you could realize that, whatever. I would not do it. I would just get my spreadsheet and keep updating it until the moment I'm ready to buy it all. And I'd buy it all and know that at that moment, what I got was 100% what I knew to be the best.
Now, counterpoint to that, as a fellow named Greg tried to alert us in every possible way on Facebook and Twitter, Monoprice right now does have some B stock of their Monolith amps. These are factory refurbished. The price is reduced, and they are in stock right now. These do not have the XLR inputs, but who cares? Because we're telling you to connect it to an AV receiver that only has RCA inputs anyway. The 3-channel one is going for $900. The 5-channel one is going for $1,100, and the 7-channel one is going for $1,300.
See how the slippery slope is.
It is a slippery slope.
I started off with a $100 2-channel amp, and I ended up almost buying a 7-channel Monolith thing because I was like, it's just a little bit more to get this. Oh, but it's just a little bit more to get that one. A little bit, and pretty soon I was going to spend $2,000. Ridiculous.
But I would probably go for the 5-channel because 5-channel to me is ideal. That way 6 of your other speakers are being powered by the AV receiver itself. You have no problem doing that. The noise floor will stay nice and low, and then you got your 5-channel Monolith, 200 watts per channel. So if you want to take advantage of the limited B stock, that's like the only way to get a Monolith amp right now, I wouldn't tell you no. So that's my counterpoint.
You do what you want to. David, first up, since we recently talked about cheap ways to raise bookshelf speakers up to seated ear height, he wanted to suggest what he used: cinder blocks. Hey, how's college going, dude? They're cheap, very stable, and with a sheet of cork above and below, they won't scratch up anything, and you get some damping from the cork. And if you really want to pretty them up, just drape some fabric over them. My wife loves cinder blocks. She just straight up loves them. Like every once in a while, she's like, "We should just buy some cinder blocks to have them around." I'm like,
they're not expensive.
What are we gonna do with cinder blocks? I don't know. You might need them. I'm like, they grow spiders. That's what they do. You leave them outside and they grow spiders, and then rats get them or something. No, we don't need any cinder blocks around here. Anyways, but you're right. This is absolutely a viable way of raising up a speaker, and draping some fabric over them is a viable way of making them look a little bit better. So anyways, David has moved, and his new theater room is small, about 11 by 12, which means it's a bedroom, with a fairly high 9 or 10 foot ceiling. There's a closet door in one corner and double doors on the other side wall. He's actually kind of excited to find out what his dual SVS PB1000 subs can do in such a small enclosed space. They can function as chairs because this is a very small space, and those are very big subwoofers. But yeah, they're going to crush. Yep. He has 4 gig corner bass traps, and 6 2-inch thick DIY absorption panels. This is a rental, so he doesn't want to put up a lot of holes in the walls. He put his dual subs in diagonally opposite corners, and he put the corner bass traps and running 2 traps in each corner, just stacked on top of each other. Is this the best placement, or is there a better way to position the subs and bass traps? That is 1,000% how I would have told you to do it.
Yeah.
That was exactly what I was going to say. I was like, ooh, your ceiling's high. Because those GIC traps are just a little bit too big for all the to stack on top of each other for every room I've ever had them in. They're just a little bit too big to stack them on top of each other. So,
but he's got the extra ceiling height. So
extra ceiling height.
These are super fine. You've done a good job.
Yeah, this is perfect. All right, now he asks, what's the best placement for 6 panels? He knows he wants to use 2 out of the 6 on the side walls at the first reflection points, but because of where the doors are placed, they might not be perfectly symmetrical. Is that a problem? And where should you put the remaining 4 panels? It's not a problem that it's perfectly symmetrical. It's not a problem. You do what you do.
No, and it's like when he's saying not perfectly symmetrical, it's not far off.
Right.
The ones beside the double doors have to be a little bit farther back, and the one beside the closet door has to be a little bit farther forward. But this is not like miles apart by any means. That's fine.
Right. Yeah. 2 behind your front speakers, 2 behind your head.
Pretty much.
Basically, is how I would do it.
The only other thing I might do is, the first reflection point's done. I might put 2 panels behind you. And then I might consider, if you do want to mount them straddling the remaining 2 corners above your subs.
Yeah, you could do that.
That mainly because it evens out the look of the corner bass traps is one thing I'm thinking. And then
who cares?
You're kind of getting an air gap for free by having them straddle the corners.
Yeah,
although you can't really straddle the front corner that has the door on it, so forget that. But you could straddle one of the back corners there. So that's an option.
Right. Yeah. So what I would do is I would put them behind my main speakers and then listen to some stuff, and then take them out from behind my main speakers and listen to the same stuff again. And if you thought to yourself, it doesn't really seem to make that much of a difference, then I would suggest doing the thing that Rob said.
Okay. I can get on board with that.
So he says, so what's the best way to mount the 2-inch thick panels so they have an air gap behind them? Okay, so when I mounted my panels in here, I got those little, they look like a question mark, kind of a little piece of wire, and it's got like a drill side, and you just kind of drill it right into the wall, and then it twists around, and it presses against the wall, and you can use them as a hanger.
Okay.
Right? Those can take like a ridiculous amount of weight. I'm surprised. So what I would do if I were you, and you don't have to do this, but the way I would do this is I would attach something to the back of the panel that was soft to keep it off the wall, whatever that might be. Erasers or something. I guess or something. I mean, we're going super cheap. Rob is probably going to say like 100 mouse pads. I've got some. You could cut them up.
Not in this case.
But you could do and just hang them with the other thing I just said.
Yeah, you can also just use like simple angle brackets, little L brackets.
They all work. Yeah, L brackets, sure.
Yeah, L brackets. That's the easiest one that I think of.
Well, and the reason why I like hanging them with the thing that I'm hanging them with is simply because you don't have to be perfect when you hang them. Like if you mess it up, you just pull it out and it's left like a pinhole size thing in your wall that you can easily spackle and paint or not, depending on how you feel about this rental place, and then just put another one in, right next to it, right until you get into the right spot. So that's I really like that hanging solution. And frankly, air gaps are increased performance, no doubt. I don't want to say that they don't increase performance, but you might. I mean, I stopped caring about air gaps when I hung my most recent panels. It looks weird. It always has looked weird, and I've never really liked any of the solutions for hanging them. I just put them flush to the wall. I'm sorry, I do.
Yeah.
So his receiver is a Denon X4000. Yay, I have one too. So he doesn't have Atmos. He has 5 RBH Signature Series speakers, 3 661s across the front, 2 66SE dipole surrounds. Then he owns a pair of EMP Tech E3B bookshelf speakers and a pair of Focal Little Birds. He's trying to decide what would be best for surround speakers. The RBHs, the dipoles, are quite large, and they are. They're really They're ridiculously large. And because of the double door, they'd have to be a bit behind his couch, unless he basically moves his couch right behind, against the back wall. The MP Tech speakers have keyhole mounts, and they come with port plugs that are meant to be used if the speakers are mounted flush against the wall. They'd be easier to position and mount, and he shouldn't have any worries about their output capabilities, correct? So would they be the better choice here? I hate saying this, but yes.
I don't hate saying it at all. I mean, EMP Tech is RBH. The
I know,
timbre match is going to be
but
fine.
you have these massive dipole surround speakers that cost a lot of money.
But he has a much smaller room.
I
now,
understand
so
that.
Let's go for the speakers that are appropriate.
I
for the
would
room.
totally use the EMP Tech speakers and the Focal little birds as the surround backs.
Or as overhead Atmos, if you ever do, 5.2.2 or something.
And I would sell those dipole speakers online.
Maybe so, yeah. I would absolutely use the EMP Tech Sphere surrounds here.
Well, I hate saying it because I hate having these big, having these big speakers and not using them, because it would drive me bonkers not to use them. And I would understand if he's like, I gotta use these speakers. But I EMP, that's what I would do. I'm sorry, that's what I would do. All right, Justin Nut Bieber on Facebook. Justin's family moved from a condo to a house when they first had their first child. He thought he would set up a dedicated theater in the bedroom, but then they had a second baby, so his theater wound up in the living room, and it mostly wound up with it being a 2-channel and headphones. Mm-hmm. So now they're moving to a bigger house. We could stop having babies. Let's start with there. It's messing up your home theater life, man. I know they messed up mine. And he's trying to decide between setting up his theater in a loft area or in one of the spare 12 by 13 bedrooms. The loft is wide open, adjacent to the kids' bedrooms and the master bedroom, but he and his wife think they might get more use out of that space as it's easy for everyone to access. And it would be a nice casual space for watching sports and TV. On the other hand, the spare bedroom could offer full light control in an enclosed space, but it would almost be like a destination, and his wife isn't too keen on watching TV in a small blacked out cave. First of all, you got to do better. You got to do better PR job of selling this to your wife. Let's just start with that. We'll start with stop having babies, and then you got to sell it as not a cave. So what do we think he should do? He's been waiting on setting up Atmos, and he never completed his RBH and Presence series speakers yet. He never got the center, and now they're on to generation 2. I wouldn't worry about that. By the second generation, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
And if he uses the loft, he's really sure how to set everything up. Should he put his couch against the half wall that opens up the rest of the house, or should he put his TV on that stand against the half wall and have the couch against the full wall on the other side? Either way leaves him with uneven side walls, since there are stairs and bedrooms on one side and a big window on the other. What should he do to make his home theater dreams come true, especially since he'd like to be able to watch movies after the kids are asleep, but also keep his wife happy? The loft is a terrible idea. Like on every single level, I hate the loft. I hate it. Now, let's talk about your wife for a second. She sounds like a lovely person. I just want to start with that in case she's listening. Now, my wife adores that we have a dedicated theater room. And okay, let me tell you why. TV is never the focal point of what we do, unless we come in here, and then we come in here as a family to watch something. Right. Sometimes we watch movies, sometimes we watch TV together, but we do it together, and it's a place. And what it means is that we are never we're never competing with the TV. We have friends over and we want to talk. There's not a TV in the room that's distracting us. Now, I have no problems with you setting up your loft space with a TV, yes, or with a sound bar or a 2-channel, yes, system that, yes, could be used for casual sports watching when people are over, or that sort of thing. But the dedicated theater, okay, you want to watch movies at night? You do not have your theater next to your master bedroom. That is the most terriblest idea in the whole world. My first theater was down the hall from my master bedroom, and my wife heard everything. Yep. She would come out, and I mean, it was literally on the other side of the house. There was only one room past, so there was the kitchen, dining room area, and then there was like a wall, but it was open. And then the theater, then the front door, then the hallway with 2-3 bedrooms all the way down that hall, and my master bedroom was all the way at the end. and she still woke up all the time to tell me to turn it down. Do not put it next to the kids' room. Do not put it next to your master bedroom. Put it as far away as you can, and then open up all the walls and stuff it full of insulation.
He was saying that if he were to go for the spare bedroom, he would like to have a projector because he's been dreaming about having a projector the whole time. So I'm like, hold on a second. You were going to buy a projector anyway. You already own a TV.
Yeah, put the TV upstairs.
Put the TV in the loft.
Yeah.
Get a soundbar, or heck, even don't. You said it's for casual viewing. Maybe the TV's built-in speakers are good enough. Or I bet you Justin has a spare pair of speakers of some kind.
You will by the end of this, I bet.
He's
already got the. I don't know if you're showing the picture, but he's got a pool table up in the loft.
I think the pool table was the last people, so he says that's going away.
No,
this is just to show the space of the loft. I would just put the TV against the full-size wall and have your seat against the half wall. Because then you're not worrying about dialogue intelligibility problems from the wall being directly behind you. But make this a totally casual play area. You can watch some sports here. Use the TV you already have. Justin goes through speakers like crazy. So I'm sure you have a spare pair of speakers if you're built-in TV.
This is the play area. This is the kids' play area. It has a TV. It has a couch.
Yeah. So don't spend any money on the loft. Use what you already have. And then the 12 by 13 bedroom is your day. You know what? If nobody else wants to go in there, you get to go in there and have a private theater, man.
Put a lock on it. Put a lock on it.
That is, I don't know. I mean, as a single guy living in a 900 square foot apartment with 3 televisions, to me, obviously, you have at least 2 TVs in a house. So
I have one. I have my projector, and that's it. That's all I have. I have 3 screens in this house, not including laptops. But 2 of them are, one's connected to a computer, one's connected to the Retro Pi, and the other one's the projector. So that's it. How much time do we have?
Let's get through at least a couple more, and then I'm going to hit number 20 at the very end just because it's a super fast answer.
Don wound up buying a Marantz SR7010 receiver. He got a Monoprice Monolith 3-channel amp that he'd like to use with his front, left, center, and right speakers. And he got his Atmos speakers installed roughly 5 feet in front of him and behind him. So it's a 7.2.4 setup, and he's excited to fire it up. Well, no problem. He finds the Marantz manual confusing, and the number of connections that needed to be made is a bit overwhelming. Where does he even start? What gets plugged into what? Can we offer some guidance to get this all working without blowing anything up? You're not going to blow anything up. Start with that. Okay, so we don't have nearly enough information, but let's just pretend that you're in the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, you have wired your 7.2.4 speakers, and then all the wires are dangling out of the wall
with no labels.
With no labels on them, and you now have to connect them to things.
Even with that, there's a way to do this.
Of course, yes. So with this, okay, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to need a friend. It's probably the easiest way to do this. And you're going to take the speaker wire and you're going to connect it to like a AAA battery or a AA battery. Just like one on either side. And that will make the driver pop a little bit. Just make a little pop, 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 pop. And they'll just tell you which speaker it is. Now you can label it.
Okay.
That's the easiest way I know of to figure out which wire is good to what.
So I was going to say, because he's like, where do I even start? So I'm like, step number 1. You look at the back of your SR7010.
Right.
And you find where it says pre-outs. And there will be, on the 7010, there's going to be 13 speaker pre-outs and 2 subwoofer pre-outs.
Right.
You want to find the ones that are labeled front, left and right, and center.
Right.
And you're going to use 3 RCA cables and connect the front, left, and right, and the center pre-outs to the inputs of your 3-channel Monoprice Monolith amp. Make sure you know which pre-out is going to which channel of your amp, and now those are your front, left, center, and right. And you plug the speaker wires from your front, left, center, and right speakers into your Monoprice Monolith amp.
Right.
That part's done.
Then you're going to look at the speaker level outputs or the speaker wire connectors.
The binding posts at the bottom of the SR7010. Yeah.
Then look for surround left, surround right. This is going to be in this order. Surround left, surround right, surround back left, or it might have a bunch of slashes with it.
Yeah.
Surround back left, surround back right. And then the next one's going to be...
Yeah, there'll be height 1 left and right. Those you want to attach to your top front speakers.
Right.
And then there's another one labeled height 2/front wide. those get connected to your top rear speakers.
Now when you go through your auto setup,
well, I want to mention,
that,
because this is a Marantz, and he's been using this Marantz already. So this is why it didn't come up automatically. Because when you turn on the Marantz SR7010 for the very first time, it will activate the setup assistant. And it's actually really good. Oh, like, finally,
factory reset.
A setup. Well, you don't even have to do that. You press your setup button on your remote, you scroll down to the bottom where it says setup assistant, and you say begin. Because you can run the setup assistant manually. It's in the setup menu. So run the setup assistant, because honestly, it goes through step by step. And sometimes people are worried because they've heard the thing of don't ever have your AV receiver on while you plug in or unplug anything from the back of the receiver, which is normally very good advice.
Yeah,
but the setup assistant is designed to hold your hand and walk you step by step and say, plug in your center speaker now, and it has turned off all the amplifiers. There's no current running through anything at this point. And then it will say, have you plugged in your center speaker? And you say yes. It says, would you like to confirm that your center speaker is plugged in? You say yes, and it plays a test tone out of your center speaker, and it says, did a test tone play out of your center speaker? And if you say no, it goes, well, then it's not connected to the right thing, and you go back and you do it again until you get it right. So this is a really good way to do it, and part of the setup assistant process will get you to run Odyssey, and it'll give you all the instructions on how to run Odyssey. So honestly, once you have the monolith connected, the amplifier connected, that's the one thing that the setup assistant might not tell you to do.
Right.
But that's not too hard. So that's done. The setup assistant will take care of the rest. After you've finished the setup assistant, manually go into your speaker settings. If any of them have been set to large, change them to small. Look at the crossover frequencies. If any of them are higher than 80 hertz, leave them alone. If any of them are lower than 80 hertz, set them to 80 hertz instead. You're done.
All right, looks like we're skipping to question 20. Good.
Really? We can't do Nick's?
I'm done. I'm tired.
I know you, but we started late.
I don't care.
But Nick's is so short. I just want to get through Nick's.
It's just, hold on. I gotta back up.
Haha, my begging has worked.
It's such so annoying sometimes. I don't want anybody to think I don't like doing this podcast. I love doing this podcast. I mean, clearly I've been doing it for so long. I must love it. But at the same time, Rob does this. He's on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. We start at 9 p.m. on the East Coast and finish at 11. At 11 o'clock, I am clocked out. My brain's done. And he's like, it's not that late. I'm like,
8 o'clock, man.
It's 8 o'clock.
Peak time.
It's 8 o'clock. He's just getting warmed up. He's going to go watch 2 movies after this. So when I talk about being tired over the time, it's not fair. It's not fair. We switch the time zones.
You know what? If you want to start even earlier, but you take care of all of the topic list, I'll make that deal.
No, that is not the problem. The problem is that I can't start any earlier. I would love to start earlier. I can't start earlier because, I mean, I still had people, I had to go out there and shoo them out of the kitchen because I can hear them through the wall. Nick, this is the last one. Nick recalls Rob talking about putting up absorption and diffusion panels and running Odyssey, but then listening to bass sweeps through each speaker one at a time, and then manually adjusting the crossover frequencies for each speaker, sometimes setting it higher than 80 hertz to get the most linear response. Mm-hmm. How far could someone reasonably take this approach? The approach is already unreasonable, so you have already lost your argument, sir. It is an unreasonable thing that Rob is doing. Rob is the only one that does it. It's weird. That is, what is the highest crossover frequency we would ever consider using, including the Atmos speakers? At some point, we start to run into directionality problems, right? Okay, so the question here really comes down to, like, at what point do we say this crossover is too high, and I'm worried that I'm going to hear the sounds coming out of the subwoofer and say that sound's not coming out of that speaker, it's coming out of the subwoofer.
Correct.
This is a problem that I am it's sort of a problem that I would never have, if that makes sense. And it's simply because, like we said earlier, we tend to only recommend speakers that play fairly nicely with subwoofers. So how high would I go? The brain is fairly good at tricking you into thinking that things are coming from where they're supposed to be coming from.
Yeah, because we pay attention to the harmonics. Yeah.
So when that sound comes out of that speaker, I think that even though the subwoofer is playing a sound that you should be able to localize to it. The rest of the sounds coming from someplace else, your brain will ignore that the directionality of the subwoofer sounds and place them in that speaker for you.
Largely so, yeah.
So I would be fairly unconcerned about that unless I noticed directionality being an issue. But I'm guessing that would be a very specific use case that would happen, and it wouldn't be universal. It wouldn't be all the time. It would only happen occasionally, and I doubt that it would even happen at all, to be honest with you.
Although, as we said in a previous question, when you start getting towards 120, 150, it starts to get a little bit iffy. So if I'm getting upwards, so first of all, the procedure that I use, I actually play the bass sweep through each speaker individually in its location where it's going to be before I do anything else. Because and I listen in each of my seats. Because what I'm trying to find is at what point does that speaker start to sound uneven from seat to seat in the bass? And sometimes, just because of room acoustics, that starts to happen above 80 hertz or very close to 80 hertz.
Right.
Not always, but just depends on the room and the dimensions and where I'm sitting in the room and all that stuff. So if that's the case, I want to set the crossover higher than 80 hertz because I'm going to set up my multiple subwoofers to give me very uniform bass across all of my seats. And I can usually make that happen up to about 120 hertz or so. And therefore, if I cross over my speakers at 90 or 100 hertz or something like that, I'm avoiding the speaker itself sounding uneven from seat to seat and allowing my multiple subwoofers to take over that part of the frequency response instead. That's why I do it, to try and get the most, not only linear response, but uniform response across all my seats. So, yeah, around 120 hertz basically is the answer to his question. I don't want to go too much higher than that. Largely because I usually can't get my subwoofers to sound uniform above that point either. So that
you run into some real issues, and that's why I have a problem with speakers that you're crossing over really much higher than the 100 hertz.
Yeah.
When 80 hertz, okay, 80 hertz is fine, is great. 90 hertz is okay. 100 hertz, I'm like, what's going on here? Yeah. What's wrong with it? What's wrong?
I'm
with
okay with 100 hertz usually.
But once we get up past that, I start getting I stop considering that a speaker I'm going to buy. So this is a problem that I don't have because I will not purchase a speaker that does this, if that makes sense. So, but people have, and you run into these issues, and you just might lose frequencies. Yeah. And if it's in a surround speaker or especially an Atmos speaker, I would be 100% unconcerned about losing those frequencies because it's not going to happen that often. All right, the very last question here, because Rob wants to answer it really quick, is Jack. Jack's significant other would like a record player as a gift. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. It's not for critical listening, and the easier to use, the better. Furthermore, they'll be plugged into a 2.1 setup that does not have a phono input, so what we'd recommend. There are a lot, because of the, I'm going to put this in air quotes, renaissance of vinyl coming back. A lot of low-cost record players have hit the market, and most of the low-cost ones, you are fortunate, that they come being ready to be plugged into just about anything, which means they have a phono
preamp already
built into it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I've seen them before at Target. I've seen them before. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend that. I know that Rob's recommending one from Audio-Technica, but that would have been my first recommendation to you already, because I've seen over the years that they've been putting out some pretty good low cost, like $100, $200, $250 ones that have hit the market. So which one in particular are you recommending?
So I'm going to recommend the AT, that stands for Audio-Technica LP-60. I mean, look it up. There are a ton of reviews saying this is a pretty darn good little player. Regularly goes for $100. It's on sale at Best Buy for $90 right now. So
there you
don't
go.
think you can complain about
Best
the price.
Buy still a place?
It has a phono preamp built in, so it just has the regular red and white, left and right RCA jacks that can plug into anything that can take a CD input. It's already got the preamp. Best of all, this is an automatic player. So you don't even have to manually move the tone arm onto the record. You hit play, and the tone arm moves itself into place and drops down and raises back up when the record finishes.
Very magic.
So you said you wanted easy to use. Doesn't get easier than that. So automatic, nice price. Honestly, go ahead and read the reviews. The sound quality is just fine. Checks all the boxes. There you go. Right. That's why I wanted to answer that, because it's not a hard answer. Okay, so let's go through who we will be talking about next week. Let's go back up here. So let's see. We answered Nick's, yeah? So Tony, who we talked to last week, he's got the very nicely vacuumed carpets. So we'll be revisiting Tony. Miguel, who wrote to us on Facebook. Shane, he has some things that might be a little bit time sensitive. So Shane, I'll just say to you super duper fast, go for the wider setup that you wanted anyway. That's fine. And for the door, leave a minimum of 15 centimeters between the back wall. And so he's got a left-hand facing door where, like, if you swung the door open into the room, it would hit the back wall. Yeah. Have 15 centimeters between the back door and the left edge of that left-hand facing door. That'll be enough space to put in a 6-inch panel. It doesn't have to straddle the corner. And then I'll say really quickly, look at the Kef E301s. They look like little eggs, and you can
email this guy. We don't have to do all this right now. We're going to answer it next week anyways.
No, but it's just time sensitive, so I wanted to give it to him. So we got Caesar, Jeremy W, and Ryan. That's it.
All right.
Next week.
So let's thank our listeners of the week. We're going to thank Miguel and our patrons over at Patreon for their donations. Thank you very much. We appreciate your help.
Yes, Miguel, thank you very much for the PayPal donation. And thanks so much to our 58 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRantPodcast.
We want to thank Kurt for talking us up for accessories for less, and Bobby and John for helping my son out with a gaming computer rig. And John, I will probably be contacting you about the graphics card to see whether or not that's going to be a thing that works, or if you have a recommendation based on the knowledge that I now have a graphics card. But thank you very much, John. That's a very good recommendation. I'm going to be looking very closely at that. So
cool. Yeah, Kurt, congrats on your receiver purchase. Thanks for talking us up to accessories for less. And Bobby and John, thanks for helping out Tom's son.
All right, for AV Rant, I'm Tom Mantry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.